Welcome back. We're talking about the just concluded China-U.S. strategic and economic dialogue. Joining us from Seattle, Washington is Gary Locke. During his distinguished career, he was elected the first state governor of Asian descent in the continental United States. He served as the first Chinese-American Secretary of Commerce and later became the first Chinese-American to represent the United States as ambassador to China. Ambassador, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, as we heard, the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry did raise the issue of the status of the South China Sea during this round of the strategic dialogue. China also had something to say on that. This is what the co-chair of the dialogue, Yang Jiechi, had to say. Let's watch.
The islands of the South China Sea belong to China since ancient times, and China is entitled to maintain its territorial sovereignty and rightful maritime rights and interests.
So what did you make of those comments from the co-chair?
Well, those are long-standing positions of the Chinese government. Of course, that's disputed by many other countries in the area, Vietnam, Malaysia, the Philippines, and so forth. And it's very, very important that neither side, none of the sides, take actions that can only dig in the heels of their respective sides, that they really try to solve this peacefully and diplomatically. The United States does not take a position on the ultimate sovereignty or the ownership of those islands, but we are concerned that China is taking actions, building military bases on these, which makes it very, very, very difficult to reach a diplomatic solution.
Okay, there are differences, but let's not forget that during this strategic dialogue, there was something like 300 cooperation initiatives that were reached during the two-day meeting. 120 of those were on foreign affairs. One of those concerned the DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and both sides agreed that they would not recognize the DPRK as a nuclear power and that they would take action to make it difficult for the DPRK to initiate what they called further provocations. They also said that they were determined to impose sanctions on Pyongyang. That's a major step, isn't it?
Well, again, it shows that while we have disagreements with China on many issues, whether it's the actions that China is taking in the South China Sea, to cybersecurity or human rights, nonetheless, there are many, many areas of cooperation, scientific cooperation, medical research, climate change, trade, but also in terms of security. And certainly North Korea is one of those areas of common interest and common effort. The United States and China have worked very well together in trying to force North Korea to stop its development of a nuclear weapon, and we're very pleased that China joined with the United States in going to the United Nations and seeking tougher sanctions on North Korea. Of course, North Korea very much listens to China, and so China is a critical player in trying to move North Korea from developing a nuclear weapon.
You know, one of the hallmarks of these meetings has been the fact that both sides have worked very hard to look at the mutual benefits that will come out of these meetings. You know, mutual benefits for their countries, for their people, for their workers. One of that is the financial sector. China says it will take steps to open up to more U.S. companies. That, of course, is going to be useful to both economies, isn't it?
Well, the more that China's economy opens up to foreign companies, not just the United States, it means that there are more companies providing different products and services. It's competition for the Chinese companies. So that always benefits the consumers. When you have companies vying for the attention, the purchasing power of consumers, that means companies have to innovate. They have to make sure that they're catering to the needs, the desires of the consumer, and that's ultimately good for the consumer. At the same time, we believe that more financial products, especially for the Chinese people, will encourage them to move away from just putting money under their mattress to having greater financial security, more investment opportunities, and better financial planning for their long-term future. So this also benefits the Chinese people in terms of the sectors that are being opened up, as well as foreign companies and especially American companies. And the more that American companies are able to compete, that's all we seek, is a level playing field. But the possibility of competition and competing, and if we're able to get more business, that means more jobs for the American people.
Right, on the issue of China's currency, this is an issue that's come up again and again. China said this time that it's committed to continue what it called market-oriented exchange rate reform that allows for two-way flexibility of the yuan. Explain to us why that's important.
Well, it's important that China's currency be stable, that the government is not manipulating the value of the currency. Now, the currency has fallen because of the weak world economy. Many currencies all across the world have fallen in relationship to the U.S. dollar. The U.S. economy is strong, and therefore the U.S. dollar is strong. It's just important that we let market forces really dictate the value and where the various foreign currencies settle out.
One of the big takeaways from this round of the strategic initiative was the agreements that came out on education. 158 cooperation initiatives. China's Vice Education Minister Hao Ping hopes that more exchange platforms, he said, could be established, which he said will benefit a new breed of China-U.S. relations. How important is this type of cooperation?
If we want more cooperation, whether it's in the business sector or in the government sector, in the military sector, there needs to be more understanding of each other's peoples, culture, history, language, customs, and ways of life. And that all begins with people-to-people relationships, people-to-people exchange, and certainly students. America welcomes foreign students. We have the best colleges and universities in the world, and that's why you have such a demand by foreign students to come here, because their parents very much value our method of education, critical thinking, analytical skills instead of just memorization, which is common in many colleges and universities in other parts of the world. It's also important for American students and American people to travel to China to understand the rich history, the culture, the language, and the customs. Former Prime Minister of Great Britain, Tony Blair, used to say that diplomacy, public diplomacy, government diplomacy, first begins with people-to-people exchange, and certainly having more cooperation among our students is the critical first step.
Ambassador, this dialogue was established by the Obama administration. What is your assessment of how it's progressed so far, and how do you think it would continue under, say, a President Clinton or President Trump, the two candidates who appear will be fighting for the presidency here?
Well, the dialogue was actually started under President Bush, and it was really focused on economic issues. And under President Obama, it was expanded to include strategic or military issues, foreign policy issues, along with economic issues. So it has become a strategic and economic dialogue instead of essentially an economic dialogue. Certainly, U.S.-China relations are among the most important economically and politically in the world today. Our two countries are so interdependent economically, and the world is looking for leadership from both China and the United States to address so many of the issues facing the world, from climate change to halting terrorism or reducing the threat of nuclear proliferation. And so U.S.-China relations has really matured and grown and improved all through the years since President Nixon first visited China. And it's been fairly consistent on an upward path, an improving path, despite Democratic and during Democratic and Republican administrations, despite Democrats and Republicans being in office. We hope that that will continue.
Ambassador Gary Locke, thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you.